I'm so nearsighted. So I got to go to chemical graduate school in Florida State, where I met Gloria. After we graduated, she got a good job in West Virginia. I was unemployed for a while. Found a job eventually teaching mathematics and organic chemistry. Did that for 3 years. Then worked at DuPont for the next 29 years. If any of you has had any Gore-Tex equipment, I was the liaison between W.L. Gore and DuPont, and so I had to do stand-up all the time. Besides the teaching stand-up, I had to do stand-up for dog and pony shows. Primarily, possibly applied mathematics is my strength, in plus chemistry. So I have I'm the inventor or co-inventor of between 40 and 50 patents, US patents. Retired with Gloria in 78, moved out here. 77? No, 08, sorry, 08.
Way early.
It was way early. So I've taken up finance for, I work at the coin store on Remington and Mulberry. I brought with me a couple exhibits if you want to see after the meeting. Here are collections of Weimar hyperinflation notes, Confederate currency, obsolete currency, other hyperinflation notes, and continental currency. And I also brought a find that I had last Friday. This is called a double Louis. It's minted in 1786. It has Louis the 16th on it. Louis the 16th lost his head in about 5 years. But they were still putting out gold, pretending that they weren't bankrupt. But the meetings to try to alleviate the bankruptcy ended up eventually the nobles didn't go along with it. Radicals took over. So he lost his head in 1791, Marie Antoinette in 92, and then the radical Robespierre that caused it all lost his head in 93. So I've got this as well to show you. Let's see, what do I also? So I also did, filled in for Skip for the Old Timers Finance Club, and did the Finance Club for about 2 years until most of the people just got too old and sick. We didn't have enough to continue. So that's basically why I'm standing up here tonight. Fill in for when things go bad.
Andy, would you like to?
Oh, go ahead.
My name's Laura Bellweber. It's my husband Jeff right there. Let's see, I grew up in Wyoming. I've spent time in Florida, Oregon, Washington, Mississippi, here, a bunch of other places that escape my mind right at the moment. I am a retired veterinarian, and I'm sorry I cannot help you with your pets issues because I am not licensed now. I didn't pay for my renewal of my license. I currently spend most of my time working with Colorado Parks and Wildlife, as well as Larimer County Division of Natural Resources, doing things like raptor counts, raptor nest monitoring, so on and so forth. We enjoy hunting, fishing, camping. Don't know what else to say. Me in a nutshell. Yes.
What motivates you to be on the board?
What motivated me to be on the board? I've lived in this neighborhood since 2006. Jeff and I moved here in 2006. We have not participated on the board, and I thought it was about time. I've tried a couple times to be elected to the board or have offered my services when a vacancy has come up. And so I just think it's a good thing to give back to the community.
Hi everybody, I'm Andy Mowery. My wife is Deb, sitting right over here. First moved out here 25 years ago, originally from Chicago. In Chicago, I built high-rises. I was an aluminum and glass contractor, came out here, decided for a change of pace in life. Lived in Telluride for 4 years. Deb and I got engaged there, in fact 25 years ago, coming up on the 19th. We were engaged at the Telluride Bluegrass Festival. We actually got married in Telluride 2 years later, just above the airport there. Came in on horseback and all. And after a few years there, decided we needed to get back to so-called real life. And we'd begun an entrepreneurial path at that point. Got involved early with e-commerce and specifically eBay. And so have done that type of work ever since. That said, we originally moved here to this area, in fact, just down the block in the next neighborhood over in 2000. That's where we landed. And after living there for 6 years, we started to look around at where we might want to move and decided there wasn't any place else that we wanted to live. And this neighborhood was being built, and we decided to make the leap and move all the way down 3 blocks. So all that said, first 10 years here didn't, you probably wouldn't have even noticed us much at all. We're pretty busy working and traveling. But kind of got brought into HOA affairs not by our own choice. That got me looking into what the underlying reasons for our experience was. And what I found was we weren't really operating as designed or per parameters. And that said, the right choice was to get involved, which I did at that meeting in 2016. Started working on committee with Walker and Buck in 2017, and eventually joined the board in 2018. That said, moving up forward to today, after that period of time, it was a little bit difficult to be able to work within that particular board on issues where we weren't complying with state law. And I asked myself, why is this so difficult? Why is that so hard? And I went down, I met up with one of the legislators and found that the problems that we were having were happening all over the state. And so I went down and I participated in what are called stakeholder meetings, and I started to see patterns in what we were doing and what was going on elsewhere. And that began kind of an educational process with some of these other HOA board members and homeowners throughout Colorado. After going through now 4 legislative sessions, learned quite a bit about the history of how these things were set up and some underlying problems with CCIOA, which is the laws that govern HOAs, but only if they were formed after 1992. Any that were formed prior to that can opt in, but they don't actually have to follow all the same laws. This covers everything from single-family homes to condos, high-rises, duplexes, every other arrangement that's in Colorado, even business HOAs which exist. In particular, this past session, we started to learn from the first 3 sessions that there are some pretty strong industry groups. One of them is Community Association Institute, or CAI. And they're a national organization with local chapters. There's 2 in Colorado. And this is really a group of attorneys that are operating under the auspices of representing homeowners, but really what they represent are the interests of the attorneys that we would hire. And as a result, any changes to the laws tend to be written by them and for them, for their benefit, not for the benefit of homeowners. And after writing some really good legislation 3 seasons in a row, and then seeing it gutted or just simply vetoed or turned into nothing, several of us got together, a few of which had experience in the U.S. government and even Colorado government, and we organized a little bit differently and worked in particular with the Senior League, and as a result of that, tried to home in on things that could be done if we organized ourselves a little bit differently. And how many of you have ever testified in front of a state committee meeting or government meeting before? Okay. So you only get 3 minutes, but the work that's done prior to that meeting is pretty extensive. And I would say, even in the past year, I probably put in about 200 hours on this effort. And the results are we have now a new law. In fact, we actually have 5 that DORA is the Department of Regulatory Agencies that will affect all HOAs in Colorado. But 1137 is the one that the group I worked with, which is Colorado HOA Homeowner Advocates. We worked extensively with sponsors on a bipartisan bill, and we got it passed in a bipartisan manner, which is a major accomplishment. And this one didn't get gutted. In fact, what we originally looked at the beginning got built upon. And while I was part of that group, I was, I'll just say, a student of the group. I learned quite a bit during this process. And part of that was looking at some of the experiences here and how they matched elsewhere and what could be done to make it better. And that's the reason to put in that type of effort, is to make it better. And I stand here before you right now recognizing that just a few weeks ago we stood right here while I was told I was a harasser and all sorts of other names. Some people came up and talked to me afterwards. I'd like to acknowledge that. One person who said those things, or said some things that were pretty direct, came up to me a week later and apologized. And I gotta say, it really meant a lot to me. And what I said to her was, you know, if I was sitting there and I didn't know me, and you heard those things about me, and you believed them to be true, I could understand where you were coming from in saying those things. And she said something that was key. She said, that doesn't matter. Even if all that's true, I shouldn't have said those things to you the way that I said them. And that got me I became a little bit more retrospective right at that moment. I said, well, if sending emails in volumes is a major issue, and that really causes somebody to be so distressed, in fact, 5 people to simultaneously all resign because they received a whole bunch of emails. Well, then I need to think about, well, do I owe those people an apology? I think the answer is, well, in terms of intention, yes. I don't mean to cause anybody distress, but I've worked very hard to understand what's going on here and elsewhere. And there are major problems with HOAs in Colorado, and HOAs in Colorado have a terrible reputation. And as a result, ask the realtors groups, ask the title companies, ask the banks. This harms the values of our homes. Being in this state doesn't help anything. And I'm not trying to cause that. I'm working at the other end and being accused of sharing that information, same information that I share at the State House, same information that's being shared by hundreds of other people that advocate for the same matters. And for some reason, it's caused the opposite effect. Instead of bringing people together, everybody doesn't like it, even down to the point of how we arrange a meeting. So I apologize. I don't mean to cause any of that. I offer myself here in service. This is my volunteer time as well. So going back to CAI, they advocate operating with civility, and that within any group, you should have a way to interact even when you disagree that doesn't cause that outcome. I'm searching for that. I'd like to be able to express things that I feel are important and meaningful without them being just dismissed out of hand. I don't think that's the right way to go about things. And I don't think it's also right to just simply assign motives or to make presumptions about where it comes from. You can believe me or not believe me. That's neither here nor there. But what I can say is, I volunteered a lot of time, and that time is taken away from, more than anybody, my wife. And she'd like me to spend less time on this. Yet, I'm still standing here doing it. I was challenged to do so at the last meeting. It's the weirdest nomination ever. But I'm still gonna do it anyways, because I think that there is something good here. And let me talk about this in a positive manner. One of the problems of many HOAs is apathy, a lack of participation. So here we sit on a Wednesday night, within the shade boundaries tonight, but if we had everybody else last night, we actually had probably 100 people out at the last meeting. There's a lot of HOAs that can't get that many people to show up in sum total in a year. Our participation is great, and we have great people bringing a lot of skills, a lot of things that have really been helpful. And I think there's something else that needs to be said. The prior board, for as much as I've shared any criticism of any particular thing, once they turned over everything, which is the day after the meeting, they were completely prepared. Everything was in amazing order, top notch. The organization level and the to-do lists were fantastic. And that's another sign that we actually have great contributions here. I'd like to make some contributions too. And if there's something about my manner, my tone, the words I use, my volume, how many words I use, I can work on all that. Coach me. My wife does. She tells me all the time. I am known, even amongst my best friends, as the person who can talk both breathing in and breathing out. And this comes through when I write as well. So I can try to be all those things. And what I can tell you is, the experience down in the State House forces that. You do have to talk in bullet points. You do have to keep it concise. But there's a time and a place on detailed matters where length is unavoidable. And House Bill 221137, Altitude Law, the firm that we just hired, described that bill as a behemoth, which I think is a poor choice of words, but it gets the point across. It's a big bill. I had a Zoom meeting today for 2 hours with the head of Dora's HOA information office. He's writing up summaries of each of the bills. That bill alone is 6 times the size of any of the other summaries that he has to write up because so many different elements to it. There's no way to just drill it down to 3 bullet points. I think that should be a value here. And I'm more than willing to spend the time to help get that implemented in the best way possible for the benefit of everybody here and everybody who's not here too. So that said, I would appreciate for any of you that still have a grievance with me, please bring it to me. If there's an apology necessary, I'll give it. If there's an apology maybe even not necessary, I'll give it. I don't want to make anybody feel like they're having the worst time in the world. But please, the thing that I think through the past 3 years has been the most difficult is hearing everything secondhand. Knowing that the discussions circle this neighborhood, and I've heard other people talk about it the same way, that they're afraid to walk down the street or talk to anybody. I try not to feel that way or show it that way, but yeah, it's difficult when you know that there are people talking about you and when you know that there are things that aren't true that are being said about you. I can't do anything about it, but if you have something to bring up to me, just bring it up to me. I'm glad to talk to you about it. If we disagree, there should be a civil way to go about it. If we walk away disagreeing, just like tonight, all that's necessary in any of this is a vote. And if I'm in the minority of the vote, that's fine. That's okay. But Robert's Rules of Order says the majority rules and the minority shall be heard. And that hasn't occurred often enough here. And I would encourage anybody that feels like they're not being heard, don't be afraid to speak up. I'd be glad to spend my time listening to what you have to say, frankly, doing what you want to have done. This isn't about me trying to do something for me. I had several people, until the sun went down and it was dark, telling me that this is about my ego. Whether you believe me or not, it's not. So that said, thank you for the opportunity to be able to show you that I can do something different. Hopefully my skills will be useful and contribute to making this place better than it already is, and it's already pretty great. Thanks.
Okay, I think we can, well, thank you, Andy. We can continue to the next item of the agenda, and that's the election of officers. And I would like to nominate Poudre Overlook for secretary, and I want to self-nominate myself for treasurer, and Laura for president. And also the treasurer is to be the sole contact for all contractor interactions. Do we have comments?
Let me just make one comment. I don't know what the law is in Colorado, but usually the president and the secretary can't be the same person, in case the secretary has to verify the president signing a document. So it'd be probably more appropriate for the treasurer and the secretary to be the same person versus the president and secretary. I don't know. I'm basing that on other law, but
I hear what you're saying.
yeah,
It makes sense, but it isn't prevented.
it isn't okay.
No.
But like I said,
Here's
that was just my experience that the secretary sometimes has to attest that the president signed something, and you can't attest your own signature. So I don't know whether that is law in Colorado or not. But.
Well, I have been the secretary previously.
Well, the treasurer and secretary can be the same person. That's not a problem. It's just and I don't know what the Colorado law is. I'm just throwing that out there to you, just for argument's sake, just so you don't run into any problems in the future.
Well, there's 3 of us here, and each job is a job. So there must be some reason to keep me out of an officer position. Would you like to tell me what that is?
Well, it has to do with the next item, which is our banking options. And in order to establish an account at a bank, you need prompt minutes. And that's the main consideration.
You need prompt minutes, and I'm sorry, what would be?
The election of officers to start an account at a bank needs to be issued by the secretary.
Uh-huh.
And that's necessary.
Okay, so what does that have to do with me?
Well,
We were hoping, Andy, that, or at least I'm hoping, I don't know about Clay, you've got all this legislative knowledge and have worked in the legislative arena, and we're hoping that maybe on our website you can create like a legislative page and what the bills are, and
Of course I can.
help people put that out for folks to read and digest. And I thought that, because like I said, it's my opinion, I thought that with all your other things that you have going on, because you have told me how busy you are and what the job and everything.
We passed the law,
I know,
so the session's over.
but you were just saying that,
Session ended May 11th.
Andy, I'm aware of that.
Okay.
I would appreciate not interrupting.
Okay.
We were hoping that you would be able to create a web page that would explain things, provide links, and do all that stuff. That takes time to do it well, as I'm sure you know.
Any more comments?
So for that reason, you need to take both jobs so that you have full control.
You keep trying to make this about control, and it isn't. You
It certainly
yourself-
has the appearance of control.
Andy, you yourself said not to make assumptions. You're making the assumption.
No, I'm sharing an opinion. This is, so you controlled the time and date of the meeting and place.
I didn't control that.
Okay. You didn't allow any other agenda items, even though those were emailed to you, to be
It was
added.
a 2/3 decision.
Those are examples of control. So I'm
Hey,
relegated
excuse
to a task that you
I think he's
decide.
volunteering his services, so I think he's saying he's got time to do it. Is that what you're saying, Andy?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do it. I volunteered for the job. I have time to do it, and you decided
self-
for me what my amount of time is. I don't understand.
Are you self-nominated for secretary?
Yeah, I think I can handle the job of secretary. I've done it before.
Okay. That's all I wanted to know, is if you were self-nominated.
Yep, perfect.
So, should we hold a vote on Andy as secretary?
Well, pardon me, question, you made a motion where you made 3 nominations.
I made 3 nominations, so that
That's
should
the
be then the
motion.
first, right?
That's the motion.
That's the motion on the floor.
Yeah, so I think what we need to do is either take that back or amend it, you know.
You can't have multiple nominations at the same time. That's correct. Or, excuse me, motions at the same time. One
Right.
motion at a time.
So we have one motion.
Okay.
Shall we vote on the motion on the floor?
I suppose so.
It's only the 3 of us that vote
The board meeting.
You guys.
It's a board
get to
meeting.
vote. Why are we here?
to observe.
This is a show.
This is not a members meeting.
I thought I got to vote on that.
No, you do not.
Never mind.
I'm sorry, the board, the rules that dictate HOAs and stuff that Andy's referred to state that, all members must have the opportunity to attend all meetings, which include board meetings. And the board meetings are for the purpose of conducting the business of the board. And so only the board members vote. I apologize for any confusion.
The requirement for election of officers is at the next open meeting. So once there is any change at the next open meeting, you would have that, and that would have been July 12th, but then we had to do this because we had to write 2 checks.
Okay, shall we vote now?
Can you restate the motion?
The motion, I'm nominating Laura Bellweber for secretary and nominate myself for treasurer and nominate Laura for president, and that the treasurer is the sole contact for contractors.
Thank you.
Any more comments?
Per Mr. Flannery's comment about whether or not there's any conflict there, did you consult any experts, outside experts on the matter, or any attorneys?
I'm afraid, Andy, that's privileged information.
So, no, actually, whether or not you contacted them wouldn't be privileged.
Because your next question is who, and I'm not getting into that.
I didn't ask who, I said, did you? So the answer is yes. So what happens if we find out that that's not actually possible? Do we
We'll
have to have another special
we'll
meeting and
have
bring
to
everybody
fix
out again?
it.
You're absolutely certain that the secretary and president position can be held by the same person. You're 100% certain. And you consulted an attorney about this.
And I'm sure that if I'm incorrect, you will correct me.
But you couldn't disclose that before the meeting so we could have that knowledge, or have it someplace where we have an internet connection so we could look it up.
I'm sorry, what?
We couldn't do this meeting by Zoom so that we could have access to the internet and look it up right now. We have to take you at your word that you consulted some attorney to ensure that we don't have to do this again.
I don't think Laura answered the question of whether or not she consulted an attorney. You're presuming.
I'm asking.
No, you're guiding. She did not answer your question.
Okay.
And that cannot be an inferred affirmative or negative. She declined to answer your question.
So no negative inference is allowed at a HOA board meeting? I know that's a court, I know courtrooms have specific limitations on negative inference, but it's not disallowed entirely.
I'm
Fair?
just stating what happened. She
Are there any more
declined to
comments?
answer.
Are there any more? Yes.
Is the results of this election that you're about to have, this vote you're about to have, how permanent is that? Can it be changed at any
It can be
point?
changed.
Okay.
It's not permanent, but some speed is necessary for the coming month.
I understand that. I was just trying to determine whether this was for the duration of the...
No, it's not for the duration. We can also have new board members. We could, it's not chiseled in stone by any means.
That's helpful, thank you.
So officers can be changed at any time, at the pleasure of the board. Correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Without cost.
So, I believe Clay called for the vote. So, just to restate the motion, I have been nominated for both secretary and president. Clay has been nominated for treasurer, with the treasurer being the sole point of contact for contractors.
As the sole point of contact for contractors?
For contractor interactions.
I see. Where is that described in our bylaws? Treasurer
in
is the sole
favor?
point of contact for contractors now? That's not in our bylaws.
It doesn't.
You can't vote on that.
Yes, we can.
As okay, you're changing our bylaws now.
I vote in favor,
I vote in favor.
I vote against.
all right? The next item of business is banking options. Clay, will you please address that?
Okay, the HOA has approximately $70,000 in assets. It's held at an internet bank in Indiana. And it was so decided before because that was the greatest interest that could be obtained on the money. If you've kept up with the financial conditions, there is some semblance of 2007, 2008 going on. So having a more secure location for our assets seems to be advisable. because calling up Indiana and hoping that there's somebody else on the line is kind of important. We actually went through a situation with CompuServe about a year ago because we were worried about stocks that they held. And we spent days trying to get through to somebody. We never could. We ended up going to Fidelity. Fidelity, through their agency, got the stocks transferred from CompuServe to Fidelity. And we've got the yen under severe distress. The euro is going to be under severe stress. Banks have negative equity with interest rates going up. The Fed itself is underwater. So things are happening. The reverse repo is now over $2 trillion. The Fed is going out every night and lending $2 trillion because banks don't trust each other. Reverse repo is there as a facility for stress. So behind all of the financial things that are going on right now, there's stress. You won't hear it on the major financial channels. So we did a little bit of research with Bank of Colorado and another bank. They all have about the same kind of account, which is like a growth business account, which should handle our transactions fine. Bank of Colorado has about 80 billion in reserves. Kind of a regional bank like this is a little bit preferable to having a really major bank because essentially they engage in rehypothecation where they buy treasuries, they make a bet like fixed or floating. The next entity then can use the collateral that's set up from that original, say, 10-year bond, and they make another bet. And so you get a daisy chain of entities which are counterparties to each other. And that's why 2008 was so scary, because Lehman Brothers was in those daisy chains. And if those daisy chains get cut, the whole thing falls down. So what I propose is to move our Internet Bank of Indiana to Bank of Colorado, because there I could walk in, make sure it seems to be a very solid bank. It's in 8 states, got some 140 offices, but it's not gambling in the casino of rehypothecation. And it's certainly not something that I have to depend upon calling up somebody in Indiana. So I would move that we move our assets to a more stable location, Bank of Colorado.
Andy, do you have any comments?
I do. I'd like to hear yours first.
I've recognized these before.
So we had a bill that did not actually make it, House Bill 1387, which in general was to require HOAs to have specifics about their reserves. One of the gentlemen that I actually recommended the day that we started here a few weeks ago, Mr. David Stiver, has a company called Team Strategy, and he testified on that bill. He's also a certified financial advisor. And one of the interesting things about his perspective was about the inadequacy of reserves. He's been a CAI member for 27 years. He's a community area manager, etc. And part of the problem is in banking, what this bill was going to do was put it in the type of bank that's being described here. And part of the problem is being able to keep up with the Producers Price Index, PPI. Now, I don't have that kind of background. I do understand Clay does have significant experience here, but it's a concern to be raised where that money goes and whether or not our reserves are adequate to deal with. In this case, we only have a few things that we spend our money on. The fences probably being the largest of them. And so I think that this should be tabled until we meet with somebody like David Stiver, who is a certified person in this position. And then at an open meeting, when everybody's informed, perhaps we can get some input with everybody looking over all of this, rather than making a rushed decision at a rushed meeting to just suddenly move all our money, particularly when there's still open questions about how much do we spend on that line of fence over there, and what happened to the rest of the money that was supposed to go to the other side.
Well, there's approximately 70,000. But the problem is, they don't ring a bell when Lehman's going down. Like Jim Kramer, within 2 days prior to their collapse, said, Bear Stearns is fine, Lehman is fine. They do not reveal when they're stressed. But reverse repo is $2 trillion. It looks like a shark's fin. It is dwarfs everything that has gone before. It's not something that you stand around and twiddle your thumbs, because it will not hurt to be in a more stable bank than not, because it could again be transferred somewhere else if it had to be. But I want to go into the most stable situation, a local situation, and not lose our assets.
You're saying we're going to lose our assets in a matter of days or weeks?
When a bank goes under, you are at the end of the line. All the other creditors come first. And so, depending on the financial stability of the Internet Bank of Indiana, you're completely at the mercy of the court system. And you're at the very bottom in terms of being able to get your assets back. So I really think right now it's a time to move quickly and get this going. It can be reversed later if you find out that the Bank of Indiana, Internet Bank of Indiana, is the best place for the money. That's fine, but in the meantime, I want some. It's about $1,000 per person per household, nearly. That's a lot of money to lose if you want to twiddle your thumbs.
Is there anything that prevents this decision being made with an action without a meeting?
Well, we have a motion on the floor.
It's true, you have put a motion on the floor, okay, and you're apparently just going to ram it through, but there was no information provided before this meeting besides 4 words on an agenda.
Well, there
There's no
actually was, but it
what
kept
information about bank
disappearing.
collapse was sent to anybody prior to this meeting?
Well,
Was there any information about bank collapse sent prior to this meeting?
Well, 2008 should have been a wake-up call. Did you personally go through 2008?
I didn't lose any money in bank collapses in 2008. No,
I did. I had Lehman stock.
that's stock.
Well,
We're not talking about stock.
So
We're talking
stop,
about money in a
stop,
bank account.
stop.
We're all gonna get all kind of getting into the weeds here. a little
Right,
bit.
Right.
so,
I don't think we have enough information to make the decision, is my point, and I've
Okay.
asked for it to be tabled.
I hear your point. I agree that we really need to take a hard look at this and look at the financials and what we can do with them to help secure them. Hearing what Clay has to say, it does concern me that we're in a bank that's not even in our state. Those are my thoughts.
are there any more comments?
Could you clarify what's the relevance of the bank not being in the state? I don't understand.
I'm sorry, Andy, the comments was directed at the membership.
Okay,
We'll come back.
Can my wife ask that question?
We'll come back.
Well, let me
Well,
ask
why-
you,
why-
let me-
why-
let me
why-
ask this, is it more
Why are we
convenient?
rushing through this decision sitting in
Andy,
a field?
stop.
Is it
please.
more convenient for the board to have a local bank that they can sit down and talk to people?
Yes,
Terrific.
I'm very concerned about return of assets, not return on assets. There's a slight difference in interest rate, but it's very minimal.
What's the difference in the interest rates between the Bank of
I think
Indiana
it's
and the
0.05%.
for return?
About 0.05%.
So insignificant.
It's not much.
It's not
anyway,
much,
no matter
yeah.
what.
Well, when it's 0.01 versus 0.06
Yeah.
as your interest rate,
It's-
then it's
but
material, but-
again, it's return of assets that I'm most concerned with in this environment. You know, kudos for getting the highest interest rates that they could find.
Yeah, Keith Knight did that, I think, way
He
back
did.
when.
It's
He did
been
good
it's been a
job.
while, but things change. And if you look at the go to Fred, go to the reverse repo, and it'll blow your
Okay.
mind. Yes.
Is there such same thing as the FDIC for our account like there is for my personal account? And
Yes, but
it-
the FDIC is essentially a Band-Aid on a gaping wound. There's not enough money in the FDIC to cover anything if it really goes bad.
So that doesn't give us any security.
No.
Doesn't give
And
me
I
any
would encourage all of you to think about this for your own savings.
So Andy, I said we'd come back. Go ahead.
This just doesn't seem to be the best way to go about making a big decision like this. This is being brought up out of the blue, suddenly. I hear you. You have concerns about this, but is it possible? Is it possible at all that your read on the situation isn't accurate?
If my read is not accurate, it does no harm. Because these kinds of things happen quickly. And if you look at the yen was 135 to the dollar. The yen is collapsing. They can't hold it at 25 basis points above, just 25 basis points. When the yen goes, the euro goes, and then the dollar goes.
I mean,
All of these collapses happen in a completely different way every time. And they just, by the skin of their teeth, avoided a complete collapse in 2008. And they never solved a thing.
it sounds like you're forecasting something that's going to overshadow any of these decisions anyway. So is that going to, I mean,
Well, it's
if
possible.
if all currency collapses, aren't we going to have bigger problems than any of this?
Yes, true. I cannot protect the currency. All I can do is do the best I can for our assets
Fair enough.
on a page.
Okay, so this has to be done this evening. Can't wait a day.
It takes a while.
Can't-
It takes a
can't-
while to get
Can't
this-
allow any of us to talk to anybody else to
I'm-
get a second opinion. It's
Well,
got to be
it's
made.
completely reversible. It's nothing that we will lose anything.
Couldn't
for.
wait till tomorrow morning to make one call to any other person.
Well, again, we have a motion on the floor. So I will call for the vote. I will explain that according to Robert's rules as president, in an open vote, I do not vote except to break a tie. In a ballot or in a roll call vote, I vote. I have to vote.
So I vote for moving the Bank of Colorado, our assets.
I'm going to abstain. I don't believe I have enough information to discern one way or the other which is the best decision.
And it would appear, as I understand abstentions, that the vote
So passes.
passes.
Okay.
All right, we're coming to the end of our scheduled meeting time. Email options right now the HOA has a Gmail account. So the question I've had in my mind is, we have multiple ways to communicate. We do have a website that has communication abilities. It also has ability to store documents, which I understand. I haven't been able to get into our Gmail account. I can't get into it. Which I understand we have documents in Google Docs associated with the email account. So I've just been wondering, do we need a Gmail account if we have the ability to communicate amongst ourselves via the website or another method?
Are you suggesting that the HOA does not have an email address?
That I'm throwing it out for discussion.
It's required for nearly every type of account login. And that's
For
how
nearly every, of what?
almost any type of account that you would have elsewhere, it's an email paired with a password. So you have to have an email address.
I believe, although I don't know for sure because I haven't really checked in great depth, that you can use the web email as an email account. I don't know for sure. There is another option to create a brand new Gmail account that gets by the issues that we're having to allow the three of us to access that account without problem.
What's your problem with the access?
I can't get in.
Okay, so why don't we just get you in?
I asked you, and you told me you couldn't do it.
I did not tell you I could not do it.
You told me.
I did not tell you I could not do it.
You told me that there is two-factor authentication. You
Correct.
don't have the access. You can't do this.
No, well, Sarah's right here. So first of all, Sarah, could you repeat what you emailed yesterday about how many people should be accessing the Gmail account?
Well, I think you all should be accessing the Gmail account.
Great.
But having one owner with the password, and then that owner delegates to the other board members.
So that was the old board's decision. I'm throwing out, do we want to?
So the problem that you were having was logging in, and you were encountering a block with who has the Galaxy 10 SE? Who has that phone?
No, that was me.
Okay. So what was happening was when you were trying to log in, you got a message saying, get the code from the person that has the Galaxy 10 SE. That would be Sarah. So I got in, she sent me the code, I logged in. You couldn't because you still needed to get the code. So even though Sarah removed her phone number from there, for whatever reason, it was doing that. So I reset the password. Then you went on vacation for a week.
Without telling anyone.
Excuse me, I told you the day after. So don't make an accusation right now. You logged in on the 6th without telling anybody. You ran into that problem.
Let's have some
On the 7th, the
Whoa,
password
what
was
about
changed.
civility here?
Civility.
Yeah.
Sir?
Okay.
You're right.
Okay.
Thank you.
Shall I make a
You
motion?
logged in on the 6th, okay? And you ran into that problem. We
Yeah.
spoke on the 6th.
Yeah.
The password was changed on the 7th.
Yeah.
And it's been waiting for you. You said on the 7th, I am out of pocket for a week. That was until Monday. Your next move was to schedule this meeting. You never asked for the password.
I was unaware I had to ask for a password between the board.
You haven't even attempted a second login because there is a
I
log
did
of it.
today.
So we don't need to trash the entire Gmail account and everything that Sarah has set up quite well in order to get by whatever problem you're having. All you need is the password.
We got a question over here.
Okay.
Sarah, in
Have
fact.
you tried to delegate? As
So
the owner?
the
You're the
so
owner now.
yeah.
I know
So
that,
the
Andy.
so the share function. I do have a question for you on Google Drive that I could ask you
Sure.
afterwards.
But have you tried to delegate? To add their email addresses so they can get into the email account, and then all you'll have to do is click on your little person when you enter your own Gmail account and drop into the
So
Poudre
I ran
Overlook.
into this problem with the document revision committee about having a Gmail account. That's not the email I use. I don't do Gmail.
So you could set one up. Every other board member just sets up a new Gmail account and just uses that exclusively for this business. And then we can set up the
That's
delegation,
great
which,
for-
Sarah, I would appreciate some help
That's great
in getting that.
if it's a personal decision, and I have personally chosen not to do that. Yeah.
You can, also on the website, if there wasn't a Gmail account, homeowners can email through that. So if they had a problem or something, rather than emailing the Gmail account, you can go directly through the website.
Yeah. We just received a comment which is something that actually does need to be brought up. Somebody sent a question just yesterday asking whether or not they needed to submit to the ACC, which I do need to ask about. And that works just fine. There's an inbox right at the top of the Front Steps website.
Right, so that could be used for everything and not have a Gmail account and a website.
That was my question.
Right.
Andy's thought was you have to have some kind of an email account to set up other accounts like Zoom and those other things. Yes, Sarah.
My one concern with dropping the Google account is all those documents that are in there. If we ever do have the luxury of having a management company that provides the email or a website for our community, you don't need to pay for that website right now that we currently use and those documents that are in there.
Right, and those documents could be put in the website, and if we went to a management committee, we could address what to do with those documents at that time. They may be able to host it on their website, our homeowner website.
This is entirely unnecessary. You have a, I can't say it well enough. Sarah did a fantastic job of organizing, and it's an entire Google account, Google Drive, Gmail, it's all integrated. It's set up beautifully. And because you couldn't get logged in one time, this is a manufactured problem. There's no real problem. We'll get your access set up. You can have the password tonight. I don't think passwords should be sent by email. It's the only comment that I've made. And you have not attempted to log in again since then.
I did, just today.
I'll check that.
Go right ahead, you'll see I tried.
Well, then I
Do you have
didn't
a
get the
comment?
notice.
Question for you, Clay.
Okay.
If you're gonna set up a new bank account with the Bank of Colorado, I bet they're gonna require you to have an email address for the HOA.
Could you repeat that, please? Okay.
He's suggesting that we'll have to have an email address. I have a personal Gmail account. I don't know if that'll be sufficient for communication.
No,
But I
you need
don't
one
think
for
so.
the organization.
So so should I make a motion to keep the Gmail account? And we'll try
Well,
to
that's your decision.
and try to work through all of these other considerations, keeping the Gmail account.
All three to share the Gmail account and you all three have access. I would think it a good idea that all three have access and not just one person.
That's correct, and there's never been an intention otherwise. Clay didn't respond to any email until Monday, at all,
Well,
and has not attempted one login
stop,
since, and has not attempted one login. Period.
Yes.
I don't think a motion needs to be made to keep the Gmail address, does it? Because there's no action, it's just keeping it, so the discussion could just stop.
Three owners.
I agree.
Okay, how about a motion that the Gmail account has 3 owners?
Yes, I'd like to see that.
Is that is different than we now have? So having 3 owners of the Gmail account?
So
Well,
rather than
technical
three, it should
feasibility.
be
It's
owned
not possible.
and shared by the board members, just in case we ever have 5 or 7 or 2 or whatever.
Okay, so
Clay, that's not possible. You can't do that.
You can't do that.
you can't do that. So you have,
It's got it.
can have 3 users.
Can
All
can the owner be
access.
the HOA itself as an entity versus board
Then you have to
members?
share a password.
I
Two-factor
don't know how you would
authentication.
do that.
Yeah, I don't know either. I'm just throwing that out
Google is
there.
still going to want a human
What
being
do I
to
know?
be involved, not a non-person corporate entity. There has to be a human being involved, at least in 2022.
I think if you work together, you guys can fix this problem. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah,
that's
this
that's
is-
the problem.
Well, just work together. You gotta
That's
do
the
it.
problem.
Huh? Try it.
So,
Well, if it takes one person, it should be the president, I would think.
Yeah, that makes sense.
so,
She won't work with Gmail, and yeah, this is.
Andy,
This-
please
but
stop
this is
these
absurd.
comments.
But this is absurd.
I hear you. I recognize you don't agree. But please stop these comments. Did you make a motion or no?
I made a motion to keep the Gmail account,
Okay.
but obviously there's some questions beyond that.
All right, so let's vote on keeping the Gmail account, because that's the motion, right?
That's the motion.
Let's vote on keeping the Gmail account. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay? So the motion passes. All right, our last item is the July 12th meeting. That meeting was scheduled quite some time ago before this board took their positions. The question was, do we keep the July 12th meeting or not? Andy, I believe I am safe in saying that you would wish to keep the July 12th meeting.
So, since you've had this meeting to accomplish this, the primary concern is compliance with up to 5 new laws by August 10th.
Can you've stated that to me a couple times. Can you provide me with a link or the website?
I emailed that to you this afternoon, and that came from Dora. You can call David Donnelly at Dora.
No, let me finish my question.
Okay.
That dictates that date you just stated.
Okay, sure. So after the session ends, which this year was May 11th, 90 days later, all legislation that has passed goes into effect unless there's an action to put it on the ballot.
I'm
Which
sorry,
is-
excuse me for interrupting.
Mhm.
My question was, can you send me a link or a website that gives that date?
I sent you an email today that literally is from Dora that states August 10th is the compliance date. It was a question as to whether or not it was August 9th or August 10th.
Okay,
But
you
David Donnelly
So
cleared
the
that up.
answer is yes.
You've already received an email that states specifically August 10th is the date.
Okay, yes. You had a comment?
No, I'm just saying, no.
Oh,
I'm
the
good. It's
sun.
the sun.
Okay.
Okay, am I correct in thinking that state law supersedes all HOA bylaws and such that if there is a conflict, the state law has precedence. Therefore, there's no need to change HOA bylaws.
So this is not about changing bylaws. This is about changing policies that are required. So in 2005 and in 2013, laws were passed that required HOAs to have certain policies. David Donnelly, who is the HOA information officer, again, met with him today for 2 hours. We talked about whether or not what you're talking about, which is if you just don't violate the law, can you just leave your non-compliant policies in place? And this is a subject for discussion, so it's a fair discussion on this point. The position of Dora right now is that there are certain things that will be required to change by that time, and they're digesting, how are you going to get nearly 12,000 HOAs to do this by that date? It's a fair question, so that's true. That said, there are certain, let me ask you this, have you looked at 1137 in particular?
No.
Okay.
I have, Andy, and it's a great piece of legislation. So I think for our July 12th meeting, I think that we're in agreement that we keep the July 12th meeting. Yes.
You need some meetings sometime in advance to then determine what actions are going to be taken. Dora will have new information by that date that will tell us specifically what does and doesn't have to be changed. So as a for instance, just to give you an example, there's a policy, there's one that's regarding towing. So we don't have a parking lot, so we don't tow anybody. So we don't have anything in our rules or in our declarations or bylaws that have anything to do with towing. I don't sense we're gonna have to do anything to comply with that one. With 1137 though, there's specific requirements that have to do with rules enforcement. And those are very specific, and our policies are not in alignment right now, because there's new timelines.
The agenda for the next meeting.
Should include going through all 5 bills need to be gone through.
Okay, can you define what you mean by gone through?
I think we're gonna have to review what actions are gonna be necessary, and then we're gonna have to figure out who we're gonna hire to make sure that our language changes are legal. I think that's gonna be an action item, and we're going to, upon making the decision on who we're gonna work with, then we're gonna have to determine what that process is to make those changes.
So
These are
I'm
policy
trying
changes.
to, in a couple bullet points, what are the agenda items for the July 12th meeting?
I think it's what I just said, but I'll try stating it again.
So bullet number 1.
We need to have a review of each of these new pieces of legislation. So,
Okay.
so
Bullet number 2.
that's work that needs to be done between now and then at that time, that's when the discussion about those, because there are discretionary choices that I believe will need to be made.
But you will have information regarding that by the 12th.
Yeah, I have information right now, but we have to see what Dora's going to do, and we need to see what their output's going to be, and we should also meet with David Stiver, and we should also meet with Leah Burt.
So that's by the 12th.
By the 12th,
So
we should do that, so then we can make decisions on what actions we're going to do to.
But
Okay,
that's just a
so
simple meeting and not a board meeting, right?
A work session would probably do loads of good, so we don't take up everybody's time talking the stuff out. Yep.
So the agenda is the July 12th meeting. What's on the agenda? We have agreed to maintain the meeting, and we have agenda points. And so that should close that discussion.
You should put 5. You should have 5 sub-agenda points, and those are bills 1040, 1137, 1139, SB 059.
So.
One other. You can list them all out. Yes.
Yes.
But those,
please do that.
I got a question for you.
Yes.
Just dealing with the real politic of the situation. You're in the middle of vacation season. You have a state agency by the name of Dora that doesn't know what they're doing yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what are the consequences? I mean, are they going to come in and,
Confiscate
burn our
our
properties
green
down?
space.
I don't think that's going to happen. And you're a volunteer board. I mean, you got a life. Why don't you let this shake out a little bit, and then have your meetings down the road? Because a lot of people are going to be on vacation. They're not going to be involved in this. And I think the general population of this community, needs to pay attention to this, because it's obviously going to affect them. And I would say, if you're anything like my neck of the woods, half of my neighbors are gone now. In the middle of July, they're definitely going to be gone. So I don't think there's any great consequence if you wait on this and let it sort itself out in the legislature and with Dora, and then address it at a later date if you need to. That's just my 2 cents on it.
There's, so that's a fair point, Walker. The only thing that could trip that up is acting on enforcement prior to that.
Well,
That's
don't act on enforcement. I mean,
because there's now a $25,000 penalty.
yeah, well, I'm just saying, don't act on anything until this thing shakes out, because obviously this thing is still in a state of flux.
Well, and it would seem to me that if by July 12th it hasn't shaken out, that we may decide to cancel the meeting and postpone it.
I mean, you
for
got a
another week.
holiday in between that too. I mean,
I know.
You're not giving yourself enough time to digest this stuff, and I think that.
What I think, and this does make sense, there should be a work session once Dora releases their information, which should be within the next week and a half.
Well, then, do you guys want to?
We don't have to have a board meeting. We could have some sort of
just have a work
conference,
session.
a working session.
So am I hearing that you want to cancel the July 12th board meeting?
Would that be agreeable to you?
What other business can you imagine at this point that needs to be taken care of?
We need to discuss the committees and the
Yes,
architectural.
we have to have a chairman for the architectural committee.
Has the architectural committee remained intact? Because I was told it
No,
was.
because Sarah resigned and she was the chairman and she's no longer even part of the committee.
Okay.
So we need a chairman.
So no, we're not going to discuss.
Okay.
Okay, but you're talking about agenda items for the 12th.
Okay, so it sounds like we need a meeting.
All right. So are you saying
But
You can
you
always
want?
cancel it later.
What?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
You can always
could.
cancel it later. Why don't you just leave it?
Yeah, just
We
leave it for
could.
right now.
We
And-
could.
Ask a question. So are you talking about Dora bringing out the summaries roughly in a week and a half? Is
Yeah.
that what you were meaning? Okay.
Yeah,
That
David's.
would be helpful before digging too much.
They've been working on it for a month already, and so they're in. So, progress report today is the HOA information officer has done his summaries. That goes to the attorneys down there and other overseers, and then they have product that they produce.
All right. So we are in agreement to keep the July 12th meeting with no agenda right at the moment, correct?
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
All right. Then that concludes our agenda.
Since well, have we had our open part of the meeting?
I don't know what you're talking
New
about.
business.
That was new business.
Okay. Well, can we talk about the mowing around
Can
the
we
perimeter?
do that as an action without a meeting right after we finish?
Sure, but okay.
Why
so
would you do it as an action without a meeting?
Because we
We're
have
sitting right here.
completed our agenda items. And we are over time.
Well, if we're all willing to stay.
those who are anybody who wants to leave is pretty much left and is it packing up right now. Why can't we get the lawn mowed?
It looks like hell.
I don't disagree with anyone.
Have you been to the front area?
Yes,
All
yes.
I'm
Looks
saying
knee-deep in-
is the meeting is adjourned.
But we have no landscape committee now.
I know.
That's the problem.
That is the problem.
But you just assigned yourself as the treasurer to be the point of contact. I talked to
Exactly.
Rock today. I talked to all three of the contractors, which I guess I'm excluded from now.
Right.
They're queued up. Could I at least tell you what I? So the
are
the outlot
we-
mowing
are we
can
in
be done on the
agreement
25th and
to
26th if we
We
don't wait
either
any
mow
longer.
or we herbicide. There's two possibilities.
So are we?
Can't do the herbicide because I talked to the weed man because we've allowed it to get too long. They won't put it on this long. They need the mowing done first. I
Are
talked to
we
weed
in
man earlier
agreement
today.
for Clay to call him and get us on the book?
Yes.
So already you have Weston.
Are we in agreement?
Weston has already been contacted and has this penciled in for the 25th and 26th to do the
Okay,
outlot
he will
mowing.
confirm and he will confirm it.
Okay, and then out in front you have the watering and the mowing of the buffalo grass, which is
Correct.
to be done 3 times per summer per the very nice list that we were given.
Which we didn't have access to
you were the
until
only
you
one.
sent
You
us
got it
out
by
just recently.
you got it by email.
All right, so I can put that down as an
You've had
action
no
without a
access issues to
meeting.
these lists whatsoever.
So I can put that down as an action without a meeting to get the lawn mowed and deal with
You just
the
need to
front.
call the contractor and say, do it. There's no action
That's
without a
what
meeting necessary. That's why you have contractors.
All right,
I'm-
it'll be done.
All
It'll
right.
be done.
Okay, so Rock says he's basically available, but he wants to walk out there and look. But he wants us to make the call
Right.
on that. But it's dry and full of weeds right now.
I know.
The perimeter's waist deep over on this side. On this side, it's waist deep as well. And you can't do and Weed Man is booked out for a month at this point, and they won't come until it's already mowed.
Okay. Well, thank you for that.
I never knew until just now.
Yes.
You was a poke.
Oh, from long ago.
Where at, Wyoming?
Well, there wasn't a vote on an adjournment, but I guess
I guess we're
we're
adjourned.
adjourned.